Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited to get to share in this message series, Connected by the Spirit. My toes have been stepped on brutally, and steel-toed shoes don't even help. I'm not as good at stepping on toes as Joe is, so I'll try not to waste any time. I want to thank him for letting me have the opportunity, and thank God for this, and also thank whoever it is that set today to be the time we set our clocks back, so I don't have to worry about how long I take. I'm grateful for that. But to step on toes right away, who are you? And I want you to ask yourself that over and over again as we go, who am I? Who are you? First, to be more offensive, on a scale of 1 to 10, without any qualifications or any explanation, I'd like you to rate how generous you are. Don't tell anyone, with number 10 being the most generous and number 1 being the least generous. I'll give you a moment. Rate yourself on generosity. The reason I want you to do this is because we tend to be very generous when we are rating how generous we are. Most people tend to think they're very generous, and if you really examine it closely, it's not exactly true. And the stats I have are for the United States, but I'm not picking on this country. That's just the stats that I have. The author gave quite a bit. We, as a country, gave $319 billion in charitable donations in 2016. That sounds like quite a bit, doesn't it? That same year, we gave ourselves $1 trillion in Christmas presents for Christmas. Or over 3 times as much that we spent on gifts for one day compared to all of our charitable giving for the year. And the percentage that we give overall as a nation in charity is about 2% of our income each year, which is also less than 0.5% of our wealth that we give. Some people think, well, if I had more, I would give more. You know, that just naturally follows, right? But that would be as untrue as the other statement, because the top 20% in our country give about 1.3% of their income in charitable giving. The bottom 20% give about 3.2% of their income in charitable giving, 2.5 times as much. So we may not be as generous as we think. One reason the author suggests might be an epidemic of affluenza. And to shorten his definition, that's our need to impress others and ourselves with our prosperity, with our success, to be able to show others how great and successful we are, how impressive we are. Another might be insecurity. We're trying to amass more because we're afraid we won't have enough. Now, it's good to be good stewards and to be careful and provide for our families and ourselves. But seeking financial security can also possibly be the enemy of spiritual security and our dependence on God. Now, I'm not judging where that line falls, but that can happen. Who are you? Where this is concerned, who are you? Who am I? The series talks about shifting back, and some of the values are things that maybe we've lost some of, but I'm not sure whether we need to shift back to any earlier time, because I'm not sure this didn't always exist for us. See, as we're born as babies, and the world revolves around us. In fact, we're the center of the universe, and it is all about us. And as we grow a few years and we get to have our toys, those toys are mine. And if somebody else tries to play with them, even if we're not playing with them, hey, they're mine, and they go to war pretty quick over that. Hopefully, as we mature, we start to learn and appreciate the needs of others. And a spoiler alert for you, the point of this message is that in order to be people of generosity, that needs to be a major part of our identity. We serve a generous God, don't we? And we love Him, right? So we want to be like Him. So to be followers of Jesus, we need to learn to be generous, not as a thing to do, but as who we are. It's the same way we need to respect folks. We don't respect somebody only after they deserve it. Because Jesus told His followers in Matthew 23, you obey the things that the teachers of the law tell you because they sit in Moses' seat. In other words, they're in a position of authority and we respect authority. But then He gave them a whole new attitude because He told them how wrong they were and how they were missing the mark. So the point is not that they deserved it, but that they were in that position and we should respect them. In the same way, we are to be people of generosity. That needs to be a part of our makeup. You know, in the Old Testament, the first fruits that Adam started, that Abraham started, they were acknowledging God as the giver of everything, the giver of every good and perfect gift, just like it says in James. Every good and perfect gift is from God. They were a matter of worship. We acknowledge God when we give and when we think of it in terms of doing it for God, being like God. Because Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of these, you've done to me. So when we're giving, we are acknowledging Him and we are loving Him. Jesus said the two most important things when He was asked, serve God and love God and love your neighbor. And love and serve are really the same word. Love is an action verb. It's not just an idea. And we love by serving. So when we're serving our neighbor, we're serving God and loving Him. So Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, don't lay up treasures for yourselves on earth where moth and rust corrupt and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not corrupt and thieves do not break and steal. Because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now a treasure is not just our money. We're going to use words that talk about our money mostly, but it's not just about money, obviously, if it's our identity, if it's who we are. I think there's a list up here of things that we can be generous with. Is there? Yeah, on either side here. Can y'all think of anything we've forgotten on the list? What else can we be generous with besides these items here? I'm sorry? Raspberries? Yeah, they're on the list. I want something not on the list.
Strawberries.
And raspberries are not the kind you're thinking of, J-Rod, okay? Yeah. Clothing, very good. Yeah, excellent, excellent. Did you? Okay. Pardon? Oh, food. I thought you said booze. I was thinking I maybe didn't want to. I'm sorry. I couldn't hear, okay? My ears are like almost 63 years old. Okay. Okay, so the question is, who are you? Who are we? Is this our identity? I want you to continually do that evaluation that we started at the beginning. I want to tell you about our purpose is we're all vessels. I love the name of the church because it's used in the Bible as an example of a useful tool for God. We're vessels, and the intention for us is to be filled up in order to be poured out. That's really our purpose in life. The things that God gives us, all of those things from that list are things that He gives us so that we can use them to bless others. And by doing that, we're blessing Him. And I don't want to do definitions, but I want to give you examples of some people. There's a guy named Rick Rusamenti. He encountered a lady who had given a kidney to a friend that she had run into at Target. She found out this friend was in need of a kidney, and this lady turned out to be a match, so she donated a kidney for her friend. He was so moved and inspired by that he donated a kidney. And the person that was the recipient of the kidney that he donated was inspired also. It was a niece who wanted to give a kidney for her uncle but could not. She was not a match, but she gave one anyway. And this went down the line, and 60 kidneys were donated. And this is a true story. 60 kidneys were donated because people were inspired by what had been done. Now, that's a particularly important story to us because Kimberly and I have a good friend named Walt Irwin. I served with him as an elder at another church, and he's a good, godly man. His brother had donated a kidney for him because his I don't know what the reasons for his kidney problems were, but his brother donated a kidney to him, and it lasted for many, many years, and then it did not, and it began to fail. So the preacher's wife at his church, her name is Shannon Wilburn, donated a kidney to him. And it was successful, and he's living very well now. Shannon Wilburn is currently, I think, making a good recovery from COVID. And her husband, who is the preacher at that church, is really struggling with it and is on a ventilator right now. But it can be inspiring when someone gives something really, really meaningful. And it doesn't have to be something huge and major like an organ. It can be a raspberry. In a concentration camp, there was a young lady who had been detained with her parents. I know that her mother for sure was then sent to a death camp, and she was in a horrible concentration camp. Another young lady had gotten a raspberry somehow. I don't know if it was left over from food or whether there was a place in the fence she could reach through. However she did it, she kept it in a little cloth the entire day in order to give it to her friend when she could see her as a gift. Now, when you have almost nothing and you go to that much trouble to give a gift, it has great meaning and real power. It's the power of love in a terrible place. I got to play Charles Dickens 2 years ago at Dickens on the Boulevard. And by the way, they're having that this year, November 20th, I believe. But I studied Charles Dickens in order to play the part. And what was interesting to me is that he grew up in terrible poverty. And his father was taken away to debtor's prison. When he was, I think, 12 years old, he had to live on his own because he had a job, and his mother and his siblings had to go somewhere else where a family member could help take care of them, and they were all barely scraping by. But he grew up in that poverty, and all of his writing ended up being an attempt to help people to see the needs of others and to help crack open their hearts to be generous and give and take care of other people. And it's interesting, in his story, The Christmas Carol, he named the character Ebenezer. Well, in the Bible, and you may know the song, it says, "Here I raise my Ebenezer, by thy help I've come," or "Hither by thy help I've come." Ebenezer is a stone of help. It is a monument to God for the providing that he has done for the help. And so it's interesting that he used that in saying this. But he wanted to persuade everyone, and if you read his writings, they are all about that. They will tug at your heart to know that there are people in great need, and that it should inspire us to give there. There was a man who wrote a statement. He said, "I want my last check of my life to bounce." And I had the same reaction that the author had when I read that. I thought, man, you don't know how to manage your money, and you want to cheat somebody at the end. That's just wrong. But I was wrong, actually. I want to read to you about Charles Feeney is his name. Charles F. Feeney is, or at least he used to be, a billionaire. He made his fortune in the duty-free shopping industry. He made a decision in 1984, which he kept a secret, to form a private foundation called Atlantic Philanthropics, and for 15 years ran it anonymously, even though it was one of the largest sources of charitable grants in the United States, Ireland, South Africa, and Vietnam. He covertly turned over the duty-free business to this foundation and continued to invest while giving money away in direct medical care, education, criminal justice advocacy, and peace-building initiatives. Atlantic Philanthropics will close its doors sometime around 2020. having given away $8 billion, at which time it will be by far the largest such organization to have voluntarily shut itself down. Mr. Feeney isn't irresponsible after all. He just understands that personal prosperity is not for the purpose of self, but for the purpose of purposeful generosity. He wanted, as the athletes say, he wanted to leave it all on the field. He didn't want to waste an opportunity to bless somebody. He really got it. The main character, though, for tonight is actually the poor widow that Jesus talked about in Mark chapter 12. And the situation is here, Mark 12:41, which will magically appear any second. And there it is now. Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts. It's interesting, Jesus picked, I don't think it was just a slow day. I think, and I don't think he just thought, well, let's do some people watching and just kick back. I think he had a purpose. But it is interesting because Jesus was watching, and guess what? He's still watching. The Jesus who loves us is still watching, and he still cares what we do. He still cares about our giving. Now, something I don't think I have on a slide is the things that they had to give the money in were like those things we see in the store where the quarter can roll around and around and take forever to fall down, except that they were made of metal and they tended to be really, really loud. And when you put money in to be loud and conspicuous, that was actually called sounding the trumpet. So when he talks in Matthew about sounding the trumpet, that's what he's talking about, is being loud and conspicuous with your giving so that everybody knows that that's what you're doing. So Jesus was watching. But then in Mark 12:43, the widow comes and she puts in 2 small coins that are worth maybe a penny or less. And he says, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put into the treasury more than all the others." Now, I do not believe that our Lord was mathematically challenged. So there was great meaning in what he was saying. She put in everything that she had. She understood that she was declaring something about God by putting in that money. She knew that you don't have to be rich in order to give. In fact, that will appear up here. I'm not clairvoyant. I just studied this ahead of time. You don't have to be rich to be generous. You don't have to be rich to give. And you don't have to be rich to give a lot. And she gave a lot out of her poverty. Now Mark 12:44 wraps it up for what Jesus was teaching. They all gave out of their wealth, but she out of her poverty put in everything that she had. We talked before, the wealthiest among us put in a smaller percentage. We feel like if we had more, we'd give more. That's not necessarily the case. But she was saying something by her gift. She was saying something about her faith in God. And it was everything that she had. Her poverty level, from the language that was given, she was probably homeless. And being a widow at that time, you were in really, really bad condition because you did not have a source of income. It was almost just begging or prostitution is what was done at that time because there wasn't something else available. But the next slide tells us what she's saying. She said, "God, I look to you to provide my needs, and I love you more than I love money." And one other thing that I haven't said yet because I can't remember it. God, I live for you alone. The example that she has is also inspiring because it's really, really important for us to realize that we don't have to do some grand, huge thing. Whatever God places in our hand is what we're able to give, and do it out of love. Do it because we love the recipient, even if they don't deserve it. but more because we love Jesus. And he's the one who said, whatever you've done for the least of these, you've done for me. We are all vessels. The reason that God fills us up and blesses us is so that we can pour that out and bless others. So, who are you? I do not care for Stephen King. I don't care for his books. I've actually not read any, so, I don't think I care. I don't care for his movies, and I have seen a little bit of some of those. But, and Stephen King believes in God, but he's kind of opposed to organized religion, so we don't have a lot in common there. But there was something that happened that sort of opened his eyes to see what life is about in terms of us being blessed in order to bless others. He sold 350 million books. He amassed $400 million in wealth. He was at Vassar University giving a commencement speech, and he said this: "A couple of years ago, I found out what you can't take it with you means. I found out while I was lying in a ditch at the side of a country road, covered with mud and blood, and with the tibia of my right leg poking out the side of my jeans like a branch of a broken tree taken down in a thunderstorm. I had a MasterCard in my wallet, but when you're lying in the ditch with broken glass in your hair, no one accepts MasterCard. We all know that life is ephemeral, but on that particular day and in the months that followed, I got a painful but extremely valuable look at life's simple backstage truths. We come in naked and broke. We may be dressed when we go out, but we're just as broke. Warren Buffett, going out broke. Bill Gates, he's going to go out broke. Tom Hanks, going out broke. Stephen King, broke. You guys, broke. Not a crying dime. All the money you will earn, all the stocks you will buy, all the mutual funds and precious metals you'll trade, all of that is mostly smoke and mirrors. It's still going to be a quarter past getting late, whether you tell the time on a Timex or a Rolex. I want you to consider making your life one long gift to others. And why not? All you have is on loan anyway. All that lasts is what you pass on. We have the power to help, the power to change. And why should we refuse? Because we're going to take it with us? Please. Giving is a way of taking the focus off the money we make and putting it back where it belongs, on the lives we lead, the families we raise, the communities which nurture us. Let it be the beginning of life's giving, not just of money, but of time and spirit and other things. It repays, not least of all because it helps us remember that we may be going out broke, but right now we're doing okay. Right now we have the power to do great good for others and for ourselves. So I ask you to begin the next phase of your life by giving and to continue as you begin. I think you'll find in the end that you got far more than you ever had and did more than you ever dreamed. Now that's the story from a man who came near death and realized, at least in part, what is important. He took a lot of paragraphs to say it. There was a plaque at my house when I grew up that my mom had on the wall. It said, "Only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last." And Jesus also put it very concise. He said, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." I would like for us all to live out this truth. Would you pray with me? Lord, thank you so much for this great blessing of being together with my brothers and sisters. Thank you for this opportunity. Lord, help me to receive your generous spirit so that I can try to be more like you. Lord, help us to be guided to realize that our purpose is to do good. Our purpose is to give. Our purpose is to bless others. Help us to willingly and joyfully be poured out for you. We thank you, Lord. You are generous. You answer our prayers better than we can ask or imagine. And we love you. In the name of Jesus, amen.